This is Journey to KidLit with Brooke Van Sickle, episode number 2. Welcome to the Journey to KidLit podcast. I'm your host, Brooke Van Sickle, and each week on the show, we'll discuss what it takes to write, publish, and market your kids' book. Let's get started. This episode is brought to you by BiblioKid Publishing, the children's book publisher that donates 50% of their profits back to education. For a look at their books or to learn more, visit BiblioKidPublishing.com. Hey there, and welcome to the Journey to KidLit podcast, episode number 2. I'm your host, Brooke Van Sickle, and I'm so glad you're here. Today we're going to talk about the different categories of kids' books. Did you know that more than just picture books fall into this category? In fact, there are 6 different kinds of categories for kids' books. Let me break them down for you. First, we have board books. You know those thick cardboard books that babies chew on? That's what these are. Board books are like picture books, except they're intended for infants and toddlers, and they normally have thick, heavy cardboard or even soft cloth pages, and they typically discuss a concept, like where's baby's belly, rather than having a full story arc. The second is everyone's favorite, picture books. I don't know about you, but I absolutely love picture books, particularly the ones with amazing art. There's just something awesome that happens when an author and an illustrator get together that you just don't replicate in any of the other categories. But like board books, picture books are full-colored page spreads and are intended to be read aloud to younger audiences. However, these 32-page stories tend to be targeted towards preschool and kindergarten-age children. So notice the difference in age here. It's the age of the reader that matters. If you're intending to have a story in schools, you'll want to make sure you're creating a picture book and not a board book. Awesome. Next is early readers. These are the very first books kids will read by themselves. When I was little, my very favorite book was Two Crazy Pigs, about 2 pigs that would get up to some crazy antics on the farm. Now, that's just a good reminder for all of us who want to write in this category that early readers don't always have to be educational or vocabulary focused. They can be humorous and fun. However, if you're not already a published author, you will probably not want to start by writing early readers because they cost a lot to make and they have a low return on the investment, which doesn't matter to you as a writer, but it does to publishers. So most of them will produce them in-house or work with a seasoned work-for-hire writer instead. If you're bummed by that because you thought that the early readers would be your ideal market, you might like something like the next category, chapter books. Think Junie B. Jones, My Weird School, or Ivy and Bean. Those are some of my favorites. And you want to pay attention to the word series when you think about these because chapter books are meant to be written for grades 1st to 3rd grade as a series, which means if you write one book, you better have a few more ideas up your sleeve just in case an agent or editor loves what you wrote and asks to see more. The next category is one of my favorite to write, middle grade. This one throws a lot of people off at first because of its name. These books aren't intended to be read by middle schoolers. Instead, your main character might be in middle school while the reader is more like 2nd to 5th grade, 8 to 12. Think Diary of a Wimpy Kid, My Big Dumb Diary, or The Dork Diaries. I know, there's a lot of diaries in this category, but we'd have to ask an editor why to explain that one to us. These are great for prepubescent awkwardness and all the feels, so if you're interested in that kind of thing, I highly recommend you try writing these. And that brings us to our last category, young adult. If you were kind of taken back by this category, let's remind you that these are for children because they are for ages 12 and over. And although you write these similar to you would an adult book, because this is for an intended older kids market, you need to think more PG-13 and less R-rated. Like The Hunger Games or One of Us is Lying, you don't have to play nice with your characters, you just can't describe all the blood and guts in horrific detail. There you have it, the 6 main categories of kids' books: board books, picture books, early readers, chapter books, middle grade, and young adult novels. Which one are you going to write? If after listening to this, you're still unsure what category your book idea falls into, I would remind you to look back at the age of your intended reader. Each of these books has a very specific age level they're meant for, so that'll be your best place to start. And remember, your book isn't for everyone. Even if an array of readers end up picking up your book and loving it, there is and always will be an intended market for your story. Like Harry Potter, volumes 1 through 3 are intended to be middle grade books. But later, J.K. Rowling aged up her books into the YA market, which works not only for the characters, but for the readers as they aged. And it doesn't matter that adults also read these or have watched the movies. The intended audience has always been those, and that is how they're shelved at the bookstore. That about does it for today's episode of Journey to KidLit podcast. To get the show notes and the breakdown of children's book categories we talked about today, visit the podcast tab at journeytokidlit.com under episode 2. Thanks so much for joining me. As always, I love to hear from you. So if you have a thought about today's episode or suggestion for future episodes, send me an email or reach out via Twitter. And if you liked what you heard, I'd love for you to leave a review. And while you're there, be sure to subscribe to be notified of new episodes. Until next time, happy writing!